Hi, I'm Adam Pennell, Shropshire Lad, and I love to barbecue. So today I'm going to share with you my top tips and hints, talk a little bit about ingredients, grills, equipment selection that's going to make grilling super easy for you this summer. Let's get on it. Okay, to start off, it's about selecting the right grill for you. There's hundreds of different grills on the market, and if you only want one, my advice is to find one that has a lid. A kettle like this is an ideal starter barbecue, and this is the very grill that I started with. You can do almost anything. Because you've got a lid, it gives you loads of versatility. Okay, you can turn it into a smoker, you can use it to just slowly cook things. It also helps to control the fuel burn. But get a barbecue with a lid. A kettle is a fantastic starting point. Next, fuel selection. Now, it's really important you don't just go for the cheapest, nastiest fuel that you can find in the supermarkets or at the petrol station, because often, almost always, if it doesn't say on the bag where it's from, then you can guarantee there's no sustainability or traceability. And the reality is that you're probably going to be cooking on rainforests that's come from South America. That's where a lot of our charcoal comes from that's imported. So I always use a good British charcoal. This is a mix of hardwood, it's oak, beech, ash, brings a great flavour and scent, but more importantly to me, I know exactly where it's come from and we're not damaging the earth, okay? It's really important to do that, and supporting local is top of my priority list. Then we have wood. So we can cook on wood on various different barbecues. Some barbecues you cook just with wood. It's likely that you're going to be cooking with charcoal. So if you are, then having some small chunks, this is oak, can be great for adding flavour. So you don't get so much smoke from charcoal. So if you add a little piece of wood, then that will just smoulder. Particularly, that's another reason for having a lid on your barbecue, because you can trap that smoke inside the barbecue and it flavours your food. You can use chips, but they tend to burn out quite quickly. So if you're cooking something like fish, great, because you don't need to cook it for very long. A longer cook, like a piece of pork shoulder or a brisket, then chunks are the way to go, because they will give you a long amount of sort of smoke coming off them. Using fire lighters that don't have any chemicals involved are really important. You've got this beautiful charcoal that you're using. The last thing you want to do is cover it in lighter fluid or to use those horrible nasty sort of chemical blocks. This is just straw wrapped in wax. It's available from loads of different shops or online, and it's a completely natural way of lighting your barbecue. So you take a couple of these and then you use your chimney starter. So a chimney starter is basically a cylindrical piece of metal with a little grate in the bottom. You can see how well used this one is. Yours will probably be a lot nicer than this if you buy it. I've used this an awful lot. But we light a couple of these, drop your charcoal in the top, give it 5 minutes, and you'll see that the charcoal is condensed and it's burning, and you just pour it out into your barbecue, which I'll show you shortly, and you're ready to grill. Top piece of kit, that. Okay, next up, make sure you've got some decent tongs and barbecue equipment. You know, if you buy the really cheap stuff, it tends to fall apart. But these are really important to make sure that you can get your food moved around. You know, you can get it off the grill easily. So get yourself some decent tongs and a flipper or a spatula, whatever you want to call that. Okay, cleaning your barbecue, it's really important you have a wire brush, okay? Don't mess around. Again, you don't want any chemicals near your food, so don't be using the barbecue cleaners. They're okay for the outside of your grill, but inside, all you need is heat. So get your barbecue nice and hot and a wire brush, because germs can't handle the heat and neither can grease. So you get it really hot. The grease and any debris from the barbecue before will just be rubbed off, and in no time at all, your grill will be back to normal and ready to go. Heat-proof gloves. These are really important, just for moving things around. If you need to take the grill out to add more fuel, or if you need to take something off or whatever, having heat-proof gloves at hand is essential. When it comes to actually cooking meat and vegetables actually really well, and knowing when things are done, it's really important that you have a temperature probe, okay? There's lots of different types on the market. This one is a handheld probe, so I can open it up, pop it into the meat or vegetables. I mean, particularly if you're cooking something long, like a big squash or a celeriac or something in the coals, then this will tell you when it's done, okay? You need to swap up on what temperatures you need. It doesn't tell you, but it's really quick reading, great for steaks if you want to get your steak just right. Perfect is a handheld. Also, if you're going to be cooking for longer, or if you need to learn a little bit, getting yourself a digital probe with that's Bluetooth connected to your phone is a really great idea. You can pop this in, This end of the probe will tell us what the ambient temperature of the barbecue is, and this end will tell us what's going on inside the meat or whatever it is you're cooking. And it also will tell you exactly what temperature you need to get the desired effect. So if you're cooking, say, a rib of beef and you want it to be medium rare, the app for this will tell you exactly when it's done. You just tell the app, and then you can learn from that what sort of temperatures you should be looking for certain results. You can also get probes with wires as well, which you just leave on the outside of the barbecue. That'll tell you on there exactly what's going on in the inside. And again, you'll know your ambient temperature of your barbecue and also the temperature inside the food. You cannot go with time. We always cook to temperature and not to time, because the variables are so different with barbecue. If you're cooking outside one day and it's really, really windy and you've only put a little bit of fuel in, you're going to get a completely different result to a warm, calm day where you've got a little bit more fuel in. So because of those variables, if we work to temperature, we're always going to end up with the same result at the end. If we're working to time, then you might find that you're completely way out. So always use temperature as a guide to when your food is going to be cooked. Putting a tray underneath where you're cooking is going to catch that fat and stop your barbecue from getting really dirty. You'll find that these are often available really, really cheaply just after Christmas, because the supermarkets always buy too many. So go to your bargain basement and grab a whole load for the rest of the year. That's what I do every year. Really, really great bit of kit. When it comes to flavour profiles, there's a million rubs on the market and you can buy rubs, but if you're just going to use your spice rack, these are my sort of top 5 ingredients: chili, paprika, onion granules, garlic granules, and I love allspice too. Obviously, salt and pepper goes without saying, but those are your key sort of base ingredients for any decent rub, and then you can add in whatever else you like. Or, as I say, there's many, many rubs on the market that you can use. I like to use heat, sweet, sour, and salt in balance to create umami, to create the ultimate flavour profile. And so it's really, really good to have some acidity on hand, particularly as you're cooking. Also, if things are getting a little bit too hot or burning a little bit too much, having a spritz bottle with some apple cider vinegar and water 50-50 in it is something that I use all the time. Willy's is a great one for this. It has a fantastic flavour, but you can just spray it on and it will just dampen everything down. But that acidity on the meat will bring so much more flavour, and it also helps to tenderise it as well. And of course, a barbecue sauce. We love to baste on our barbecue sauce at the end. This one I like in particular. It's my spiced apple barbecue sauce, and you've got this one in the kit too, and I'm going to show you how to use this one a little bit later on. And of course, you'll need a brush for that, so get a brush in your arsenal. Let's get cooking. Okay, right, so let's get our grill lit. So first things first, we need to take the actual cooking grate out. We should have another grate in the bottom. It's important you have a second grate in the grill because that gives air to the charcoal, air to the fuel, and keeps things burning. Secondly, it's your vents, okay? You need to make sure that the vents are open because fire needs oxygen, okay? So if your vents are shut, then it's gonna either not light, or if things are too hot, you can use the vents to close down and just to calm the fire down. So you always use the vents for control. But when we're lighting the barbecue, it's important that they're fully open. Now, I'm going to take my chimney starter, trusty old battered chimney starter here. Okay, going to drop in the eco firelighters. Chimney starter goes on top. Then we take our fuel, fill the chimney starter to the top. Okay, once your chimney starter's full, we're just going to light those eco firelighters and then just drop it back on top. And that's it. Within 5 minutes, we're going to be probably burning up to around about the top hole. You don't want to wait until the whole thing is lit because you want some unlit charcoal on the top. The stuff underneath has got a longer time to burn. You'll get a longer burn time out of your fuel. Okay, so we can see that the charcoal now is almost lit to the top. These pieces right at the top are still unlit, so it's time to turn it out. So we're going to use our heat-proof glove, grab the handle, and you'll notice I just pour all the coals onto one side of the grill. Now it's really, really important that you do that. We've all been to those barbecues where somebody fills the grill with charcoal, it's raging hot, we throw sausages on, we've got flames everywhere, and there's nowhere to move the food to. That is not a fire that's under control. It's all about controlling this fire, and by having different heat zones, you're able to do that. So if we have a flare up from some fat, or we need to move something off that's cooking too much, we have this cool side of the barbecue to do that, okay? Really, really important. Spreads out too much, you can just move a couple of coals with your tongs. You've got nice long tongs. Really try and keep those coals to one side so you have 50-50 grill zone and cooler zone. This also helps when we're cooking indirect, which I'm going to show you shortly. Before we do that, I'm just going to drop a couple of red onions directly into that fire. Now, using the fire to roast vegetables is one of my favourite things to do. It brings loads and loads of flavour, intensifies the heat. They will look completely black and like you can't eat them by the time they're finished, but inside you have the sweetest, most intensified flavour. All those natural sugars will be concentrated and it makes an absolutely delicious garnish. Lid down. I'm just going to let those cook for a little while. We'll get everything else prepared. Right, next up we're going to prepare these pork chops. Now, I would always, like with the charcoal, don't go to the supermarket to buy your meat. Use your butcher. You know, if you bought pork chops from the supermarket, they're not going to look like this. They're not going to be the thickness that we've got here. Thickness is the key to making sure we have a nice, juicy pork chop. You get these really flimsy little things, they're just going to be like leather. You know, you're going to cook them too quickly. You can't cook them really nicely like we're going to do now. What I would suggest with pork chops is probably to start them indirect and finish them directly. We should call that a reverse sear, okay? And that means that we are able to put our spices on now because they are not going to burn. Because they're not cooking directly over the fire, they're going to flavour the meat really nicely. If I was going to cook these directly over the fire, I would probably add the spices later on and just go for salt, but not in this case. Okay, so we're going to make a real simple rub using those spices I talked you through earlier. So we're going to go for a double hit of salt and a double hit of pepper, which probably equates to 2 teaspoons, probably, I'd say, of each. And then I'm going to go for a teaspoon of garlic granules, a teaspoon of onion granules, a teaspoon of smoked paprika, for some colour, but great flavour too, a teaspoon of hot chili powder, because I always love a bit of heat, and it goes with the heat, sweet, sour, salt theme that we're going with. And then finally, my favourite spice of all, pimento or allspice. This is used a lot in Caribbean food. I love Caribbean food, but it works so well with so many things. And then we're just going to mix that up. Now, often rubs will come with sugar, okay? I'm not going to put sugar in today because sugar burns. So we're going to add some sweetness right at the end of the cook, and that's going to stop us from getting too much of a char. It's fine if you're doing a low and slow cook because it's not going to char in the same way as this is quite a hot and fast grill. We're going to be cooking, even indirect, there's probably going to be 250°C in there, so we're going to be cooking quite quickly. So the sugar will come later on, which I'll talk to you about when it gets to that point. But what we're going to do now is just going to take our pork chops, drop them onto this board. Okay, so we're going to hit them right nice and liberally with that rub on both sides. Now, these have been out of the fridge for a little while. It's also important you bring your meat up to room temperature, okay? If you put these on the grill straight out of the fridge, you're going to find that the outside is going to be really, really hot whilst the middle is still kind of warming up, and then you get a really uneven cook. So if you bring the meat up to room temperature, probably an hour out of the fridge before you're going to cook it, you'll find you get much better results. I'm going to give that 10 minutes whilst we cook those onions, just for those spices to do their thing, to penetrate the flavour, because we're not marinating overnight. This is just a short marinade to give them a little bit of time in those spices. And that's our pork chops ready to go. You'll notice that at this point there is no wet ingredients. It's all just dry spices and salt. Right, okay, let's have a look at these onions, see how they're getting on. So they're just ticking away nicely, starting to blacken up. Okay, that's fine, absolutely fine. What we're waiting for is for the juices, the water, to start to fizz out, and that gives us an indication that we are reducing that water content, and that's what we're trying to do, to intensify the sugars. They'll remain, get rid of the water, and then we're left with a really sweet, delicious product. So just going to turn them in the coals, and the lid's going to go back down. If I left this lid open, then that would be fine, but the coals are going to burn away so much more quickly. This is about efficiency. So the vents are open, but the lid will mean that we get a much longer burn time than if we were just cooking on an open grill. Okay, so while we're just waiting for those onions to finish, I'm going to make a little naked slaw that I love, carrot, apple and onion slaw, really fresh, great little side. It's all about the sides, you know, this is going to make the meat come alive. So really, really simple, just a few ingredients. We're going to start with a red onion. Okay, so I'm just going to slice that very thinly, taking the skin off. Give it a little squeeze to make sure they all separate and just tease them into the bowl. I'm going to grab my mandolin and just bang a couple of apples in there. Then we're going to go for a carrot or two. Bit of fresh parsley. Chop that up nice and fine. In. Pinch of salt. And then the glug of our Willy's apple cider vinegar. The apple cider vinegar is not only going to give us flavour, but it's also going to stop that apple from turning brown. Okay, and then we're going to give it a little glug of rapeseed oil as well. I tend to use rapeseed oil over olive oil just because it's a good British product. You know, it cuts down on the air miles, it's absolutely delicious, it's really high in omega-3, great little product. And then just get your hands in there and just toss those together, and you have the most delightful little slaw that's fresh, no mayonnaise involved or anything. Goes so well with pork. You know, apples, all the apples in there, the apple cider vinegar and the fresh apples just give a really nice contrast to that smoky meat. Okay, right, so I think our onions are done. And the indication here is, look, this one has popped right out the middle, and you can see those juices popping out. That tells me that it's caramelized, it's intensified. So they're just going to come off and just wait on the board, and we'll process those in a little while. Okay, and I'm going to drop the grill straight in. We're going to take our pork chops and we're going to add those to the indirect side of the grill. So not directly over those coals. I'm going to cook them nice and slowly. And what I'm going to do at this point is also just flip up. There's a little handy flap on this grill. If not, you'd have to put it in beforehand. And we're just going to drop in a little bit of oak, just to give it a little bit of extra smoky flavour. Drop in a couple of peppers now on top of the grill, so they're going to be cooked direct whilst our pork chops are indirect. Lid back down. Waiting for those to cook, I'm just going to prep the rest of the vegetables. We've got some lovely seasonal asparagus here. Great way of finding out, this end is really woody and then the top is obviously really tender, and the easiest way to find out where the point is to cut these is just to bend them and they will snap where you need them to be. So snap the ends off your asparagus. There's one side. Then we're going to courgettes. Again, these are in abundance this year, particularly you'll know if you're growing these in your garden, you won't know what to do with them. They are amazing grilled. So we're just going to take a knife and I'm just going to slice them lengthways into 3 a piece. You want them to be around about the same thickness as the asparagus, okay? Because then they're going to cook at the same time. Okay, now we're just going to hit those with a drizzle of oil and a pinch of salt, pepper, and I'm going to use my spritz bottle just to give them a little bit of acidity too with the Willy's apple cider vinegar. Turn them over and just rub. You don't need too much seasoning on them at this stage, so what's left on the board will be enough to do the other side. Another great way of adding some sweetness is to think about fruit. And I love figs with pork. So we're just going to do, we've got these lovely fresh figs. I'm just going to cut those in half. Okay? So just going to straight down the middle. I'm not going to do anything else with them. Leave their natural flavour, but we're just going to have those ready to grill off. Now it's time to have a look at the pork again. So we can see that we're starting to get a little bit of colour on this. It's dry. It's not got any marks on it because it's not cooking directly. On this side, ever so slightly, we're just turning it over. Just going to give that side a flip as well. Sometimes it's good to make sure that the fat is facing the coals. That's going to help it to render. And we're just going to give this a spritz at this stage. And then I'm going to check the temperature as well. So I want pork to be finishing around about 60 to 62. At the moment it is 30 only. So we're going to take this, we're probably going to cook this directly once it hits about 50 to 55. So we've got a little way to go yet. I'm going to turn my peppers. We should be grilling nicely. Yes, there we go. Some lovely coloration on those. Don't worry about it if it's too black because we're going to rub all of that off at the end. We do want to intensify the sweetness of these, just like we did with the onions. Okay, and it goes back down. So you see the peppers are fizzing away now. That's an indication to me that they're ready to come off. So we're going to take those off. Okay, so we're on nearly 50 now. So what we're going to do is hit these pork chops with a little bit of this barbecue sauce, just a little slither on both sides, and then use our brush just to base that on. We're just layering flavours now. If I'd have put this on too early, then it's going to burn. Okay, you can see there's no burn on this whatsoever at this stage. It's just layering up those flavours, and this sauce contains heat, sweet, sour and salt already, so we really are layering up the flavours on these pork chops now. Going to be an explosion in your mouth, these. Okay, I'm going to just turn them over, keeping the skin or the rind side towards the fire. Okay, and same again on the other side. Just a little bit of the sauce. And a brush. You can see the fat is rendering now here, and this is going to be super crispy and delicious. And that's because we've faced it towards those coals. It's going to be hotter on that side, but it's stopping it from burning. Sugar content in the sauce is likely to burn, so that we are literally just going to finish these very, very quickly over the coals. They just need a couple more minutes on that side, just to let that sauce set in, and then we're going to finish them over these coals, and then we'll give them a rest. This is a little bit messy, so I'm going to stand away from my board because I don't want the ash everywhere, but just inside, you'll see there's this most delicious, caramelised, awesome bit of onion. Okay, so we're going to put that down to the board and do the same with the others. You lose a little bit of it, but onions cost pence, so don't worry about that. The outside is just a protective layer to make sure you get this delicious innard. We call these dirty onions because you're always going to get the odd bit of char on them, but that adds to the colour, adds to the flavour, you know, and the character of cooking outside. This isn't fine dining, this is barbecue. Excuse the dirty hands, it is all just charcoal. Okay, we're going to take our peppers now. Now I always like to try and cut the middle out, because you'll always find there's a little pool of hot liquid, and these are still quite warm, only just come off the grill. You can wait a little bit longer. I just like to pour that liquid out. Again, we see how much we've intensified the flavour of that by that. Drawing that moisture out of these peppers makes them super sweet. They're sweet anyway. So there's the sweetness of this relish right there and there. When you taste these, you won't believe how sweet they are. It's incredible. All natural sugar. Okay, popping the middle out again, losing the juice. And then, once they've cooled, you can see the steam coming out of these. You're just going to rub the outside and again take away all of that black, or as much of it as possible. Don't worry about a little bit, this is a dirty relish. And you'll see it just comes away and leaving the most delicious looking sweet peppers underneath. You can use the back of a knife if it's too hot, just to scrape it away. if you haven't got any knife skills like me, this is the best bit because we're literally just going to rough chop everything. So just straight down the middle. And the same for the onions. Pull everything together and just keep chopping it down until you end up with like almost like a paste, I suppose. It's like a chunky relish, this. So we've got our sweetness from those natural sugars. Got these delicious colours. The smell coming off this is just amazing. So chop those up a little bit. And then the heat is going to come from a little chilli. So we're just going to finely chop a chilli as well. Add that into the mix just for a little bit of heat. So we've got heat, we've got sweet, sour is going to come from our Willy's apple cider vinegar. A little drizzle of that. And the salt comes from salt. Drop the salt on and then just give that a little toss. And that's just going to be the most delicious dirty onion and pepper salsa you've ever tasted in your life. It's so good. And then we'll just pop that into a bowl on the one side. And then we're going to move back over to our meat, which I reckon is going to be ready for finishing. Okay, so you can see that that sauce now has kind of thickened. The temperature probe is saying 57, 58, so that is perfect time now to go direct. So we're just going to literally just finish these very quickly with the lid up over these coals, just to caramelise it a little bit more, finish off the colour. Give those a flip over. If it's cooking too much or starting to char up, again, use the spritz bottle to calm things down. Keep spritzing as you turn, just building up those flavour layers. One final turn, one final spritz. And these are ready to come off. And I'm going to rest them precisely where I just made that salsa. So they're going to sit in the juices that are on the board. It's so important to rest your meat. We say normally you would rest it for half the amount of the cooking time. This just allows the juices to settle. We're going to openly grill off these courgettes over the remaining of those coals. Four is probably plenty. Going to drop on asparagus. Just keep an eye on those. And then we've got our figs too, which we're just going to put. These figs don't take very much. You're just going to need the one side grilling. So we're just going to put them sliced side down, just on the edge of those coals. Okay, our coals are nice and low now, so these are just ticking away really nicely. Just getting a little bit of char on those now. Probably going to turn them over a couple of times while we wait for them. If you find that there's spots where there's a little bit more heat, you can just move things around so that everything ends up cooking evenly. Just going to roll those asparagus. They're looking great. Right, we're just going to give our veggies a little spritz. They're almost there. So you don't want to overcook those courgettes because they tend to go to mush. You want to keep some sort of firmness about them. So they are going to be good to come off just as soon as I've turned them and grilled the other side one more time. One final spray. Okay, right, we're good to load this plate up. So we're going to take our delicious looking pork chop, just look at that. We're going to slice that other one open in a minute so you can just see how juicy it actually is. Okay, we're going to go with a good hit of our naked carrot, apple and onion slaw for some freshness. Our dirty pepper and onion relish on the other side. Load up on grilled veg. And some asparagus. And then on the top, for a little extra sweetness, I'm just going to hit those with a little drizzle of honey. And squeeze a lime to finish. And there we have a perfectly cooked pork chop, grilled veg, carrot, apple, onion slaw, and dirty pepper and onion salsa, all made using the heat, sweet, sour, salt theory and utilising the kit with all of the goodies from Willy's. Let's slice open this pork chop and just have a look how juicy it is inside by cooking temperature, not to time. So I'm going to run along that bone, just take it away from the bone so we can get a full slice. That there is what we call the chef's treat. I'll have a gnaw on that later. But let's slice through the middle. And let's just see how juicy that pork chop is in the middle. And that's by cooking to temperature and not to time. It's so, so important. It makes a huge difference. Make sure you try it. I'm Adam Pennell, Shropshire Lad. I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen today. I hope you've learned something. Go out there, have a go, enjoy it, and we really, really hope that you enjoy your barbecue kit. We'll see you next time.